Stop. Keep. Stop. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the second part of the Community Talk Show. I'm your host, Mohammed Amin, and for the next half an hour we'll be covering another interesting topic in our Community Talk Show this week. Firstly, you are listening to the Community Talk Show on Radio Aapki Awaaz, www.aapkiawaaz.co.uk, and you can advertise and sponsor a program on 07944808141. You can listen to us on the Radio Garden app, Hindi radio app, and also recording of these programs are available on YouTube, on Facebook Live. And we just like to introduce you to my guest, regular on my program, Liaqat Lone Saab, and I'll set Liaqat Saab to explain what we're going to discuss today. Assalamu alaikum ji, welcome to my show.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much, Radio Aapki Awaaz, and all of your team to give us a chance to come here and talk about Kashmir. And today's topic is Kunan, Poshpora. There's two towns in the South Kashmir district, Kunan. 23rd of February 1991, a mass rape happened. The occupied forces raped more than 100 women. The youngest one was 13-year-old, and the oldest one was 80 years old woman. This is one of the worst brutality in the history of Kashmir, and unfortunately, more than 31 years now on, the families could not get the justice, and the occupied forces, due to their impunity and the draconian laws like Armed Forces Safety Act, called AFSA, they nobody can punish them, so they get rid of all the evidences, and that's the reason I'm here today to talk about this one of the worst day in our history, and make awareness in our community so they can raise their voice to the international community, through the social media, and to the NGOs and all the human rights activists, not only today, but moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for enlightening me on that interesting topic. Viewers and listeners, we just have a live call-in, and we'll go to our live call-in, Parveen Khan. Assalamu alaikum, Mohammed Amin from Radio Aapki Awaaz. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Wa alaikum assalam, everybody. I hope everybody is safe.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate you giving up your time this evening. Tell me a bit about the issue.
Well, the issue is really basic human rights and the rights of women especially. And as we know, women are used as a tool of war. And basically what happened in 1991 was a war act, and that was done by the Indian Army, and they destroyed the women's lives. They destroyed generations of thinking, of thought, of safety, of, as a woman, it's very, ourselves and who we are is very precious to us, and to have that violated, that is just, it's animalistic things that happen to these women by the Indian Army.
I was reading some information about the mothers, the sisters. Some of the mothers were actually expecting, and their rights were violated.
Yes, that's true. And I think what the Indian Army has done is blame everything on the victim. And we see this again and again and again when it comes to any sort of violation against women. And it's just disgusting, and it's horrible, and it's not right. And as Liaqat said, where's the justice? Where's the fairness? we talk about women's rights, we talk about basic human rights, and there's a big revival going on about how women are treated in society, in wider society. But when something horrendous like this happens and nothing is done, how are we as women supposed to feel safe? I mean, we've had in the recent last year or so, there's so many different cases, what's happening in England, and look at the hoo-ha, and look at the campaigns, and look at the, the things that are happening in the media to try to get women's rights. But just because it happened in Kashmir, nobody is talking about it. Because to be honest, a lot of people think Kashmiri women don't have any rights. The men don't have any rights. And it's always, the Indian Army has this agenda and this idea that they weren't victims. And even with the women that were pregnant and had the children after the rapes, they're still blaming the women, that the women are trying to, because they've had, something going on and they just want to blame the Indian Army. It's victimizing the victim again and again and again, and it needs to stop and it needs to be highlighted.
And these women and the men that you're talking about with the Kashmir issue, Wafi, at the end of the day, they are human beings. Haven't they got any rights?
Of course, we're all human beings, and I always say this, that, don't we bleed the same? If you cut me, I'm going to bleed the same as if I cut you. So this is why we get so passionate about this, and I get so passionate about nobody is bringing this up. It wasn't just one woman that got raped. It wasn't that one pregnant woman got raped. There were 102 villages. So they were systematically raping these women while also, meanwhile, torturing their husbands and their brothers. Don't forget that. So, where is the defense? Where is the justice? Where is the humanity in this? And women have been used as tools and as things for generations by many armies, actually. But I think it needs to stop.
In just a second, I'll just bring in Liaqat Saab. Liaqat Saab, why do you think that this issue of women, whether they're women or whether they're men in Kashmir, it's not highlighted and it's not brought to the forefront of the Western world?
I believe the Western world is talking in commercial language. So because unfortunately there is, if you see the trade between these big so-called powers, they are doing the trade agreements on the basis of the wealth, arms, and nobody is caring about how much blood the Kashmiris have on the streets of Srinagar or the streets of Jammu or Leh Ladakh. So what we need to do is, in diaspora Kashmiri community, we have 1 million Kashmiris living in United Kingdom, need to come out of their comfort zone and speak about those women and children and the elderly who are suffering in Indian occupied Kashmir. And how can we sit silent and in this comfort life when our brothers and sisters are suffering in Indian occupied Kashmir? I can't sit because I have my family, my close relatives in Indian occupied Kashmir. The women who were raped, the children, the young girl who was 13 was just like my daughter. And the woman who was raped at the age of 80 was just like my mother. And if we have those kind of feelings, how can you sit at home? We need to come out. This is my appeal to our Kashmiri diaspora community here in England, that we need to come out of our comfort zone and raise our voice for those voiceless Kashmiris. How can we do that? Is the human rights organization, Amnesty International, your local MPs, your councillors who you vote, they need to raise their voice on the humanitarian grounds. And this is how we can fight to all these brutalities which have been, like the Kashmiris have been the victim of all these brutalities since like 74 years.
Parveen, back over to you. This morning, as you probably heard, Russia has started its attack on Ukraine. Now, one thought that went through my head when I heard about that report: what's happening in Kashmir nowadays?
I mean, the same thing. It's been a war for 74 years, but it's an unfair war. It's an unfair war. It's where women are getting raped by people that have power, that have authority, that have beyond rights, if that makes sense. But it's been a war, and I always say that it is a war. It's a war of oppressing people. It's a war of not having people having a voice. The Kashmiri people have suffered so many years and decades and years, and they still are suffering. I mean, even today the British government was saying about sanctions against Russia. Russia is in central London. They own properties. They own, there's big businesses. Chelsea Football Club. They've got sanctions. So why can they not do sanctions against India for what it's doing? If it is about economy, because remember, Russia has oil and other wealth, and it's put a lot of money into the UK. So why, as soon as this happens, Russia, let's have sanctions against Russia. Why can't we have sanctions against India? It's not, it's not something small that India is doing currently at the moment. With the elections coming up, everything that is happening in India, and demonizing Muslims in the media, in the social media, and Islam, and demonizing the religion of Islam is disgusting. But we can do sanctions against Russia. Why can we not do sanctions against India?
This is why I was going to lead on to you. My leading question was going to be to say, look what's happened with Russia and Ukraine this morning. Automatically, the world is talking about sanctions. They're talking about blocking SWIFT transactions, so money transactions. They're blocking all these transactions. Now, that will take quite a bit of time to actually hit the Russian economy. But why couldn't that be done for India for 74 years?
I mean, I think it's a lot to do with the past. It's a lot to do with what maybe the British feel guilty about what happened in India. And remember, India was independent on the backs of a lot of Muslim people there. A lot of Muslims sacrificed in order for India to have the freedom and independence it has now. Don't forget that. But it's just the unfairness of everything. Maybe it's historical. It can't be economical, because as soon as Russia's done that, they want to put sanctions on. They want to put sanctions on Iran. Remember Iran?
Yeah.
They want to put sanctions on Iraq. All the Muslim countries they want to put sanctions on, but they don't go and put sanctions on what's happening in mass rapes and mass murders. And don't forget Gujarat, what happened in Gujarat. This is the government doing violence against its own people. But, it's a hypocrisy, isn't it? Once again, there's a lot of hypocrisy going on, and we don't know what is actually happening behind the scenes. Fair enough, India's got a big economy, but remember the poverty in India. There's so much. The poor are getting, taken out, put into slums rather than the Indian economy, big offices and everything. So I don't know. I can't explain it, because it could be hypocrisy, it could be the history, it could be the majority of Kashmiri people are Muslims. So at the moment, especially after September 11th, nobody really cares about Muslims. There's Islamophobia in a political party, and nobody bats an eyelid. And, it's okay. And I think, and if we're honest, I think it is a lot to do with Muslim leadership as well. So in the Muslim world, we need leadership, and we need good leadership to give the voice to the voiceless.
Thank you, Pari. Now just go back to Liaqat. Liaqat, you mentioned earlier on 74 years of the Kashmir issue. Why haven't we got a solution?
Okay. In my view, first of all, I need to make it clear that when we talk about Kashmir issue, we shouldn't be confused about the religions. There is no religious war happening in Kashmir. The Kashmir dispute is not between Hindu and Muslim. This is the dispute which matters the lives of more than 20 million people. So we have Hindus, we have Christian, we have Muslims, we have Jews, we have everybody lived together before 1947. They lived like brothers and sisters. What happened in 1947 when Pakistan and India were two countries? Kashmir was there more than 5,000 years in the global history. And I think the British government is responsible, because they left this mess. When they left India, they left this mess which should have been cleared by them.
Just a quick point to our viewers and listeners that before India and Pakistan effectively were like it was British India, and then obviously formation of Pakistan in 1947 and India independence. Kashmir was a sovereign state
It
prior to
was,
that.
of course, it was, and even if you go back to the history of these two countries, it has been an independent country long before Pakistan and India came into being. And my point is that if you you bring in okay, there is a Muslim population, but who cares about the Muslim? You see how many Muslims are in the world. There's more than 1 billion. But what they have done? Nothing. You see, Prime Minister of India comes to Muslim countries. They give him a vote for what? He has been involved in crimes. This man was banned to travel abroad, like United Kingdom and USA. Now look at the hypocrisy of the international world. Now they give him full protocol and put the red carpet under his feet and they give him a full protocol for what? So that's why I said in the beginning that the international community is blind. They just speak the commercial language, the language of the money. And unfortunately, the Kashmiris have not achieved that luxurious, the trade yet. So the international community, we don't have oils there. If we have oil, they must make an excuse to intervene and make an excuse to be there. But one day, I believe, and it's my belief that more than 100,000 people have given their lives, and the blood of our great heroes will never go away without the freedom and the complete independence of our country. And I have that strong belief, and we will fight. And I will raise my voice for those innocent people till my last breath, because I feel they are me and I'm one of them. So that's why I'm here every week or every month.
MashaAllah, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Parveen, one final question for you before I wrap up my conversation this evening. What do we do? I know we've touched on it, but one final message is, how do we highlight this in a large scale to bring it up to the world attention of the issues of Kashmir, bearing in mind we were in lockdown in the UK and look how we were suffering. I believe Srinagar is still under the good old lockdown legislation.
I think we're all responsible and we're all accountable for what happens in Kashmir. And like Liaqat says, he comes every week, we do protests, we, get together, we make a big sort of arrangement to get everybody together. I think it's a responsibility of the Kashmiri community abroad, about, the Pakistani community, to highlight it. First of all, research what's happened. First of all, get the facts right. First of all, know the history of what's been happening in 74 years, and then you highlight it. Like it said, to the MPs, newspapers, use social media in a productive, effective way. We all need to wake up. We cannot just sit back and think, okay, it's happening, many thousands of miles away. No, it's people, it's human rights, it's women getting raped and children getting murdered and boys getting tortured. We cannot keep silent, and we are all accountable and responsible. So it's up to us. Little steps we can do. Like Liaqat, write to your MP, write to your local newspaper, protest outside the Indian High Commission. There's little steps that we can all do, and we need to stop. We need to stop and think about what's happening and be accountable and responsible, because it is our duty to do that as human beings to another human being.
Pavina, I like your solutions. Do we do that individually or do we do that as collectively?
Start individually, start in the home, and then do it collectively. Because unless you understand what the situation is, unless you've got the facts, then you can't fight for something that you're not sure about. So get your history, learn what is happening now in India, learn what is happening in Kashmir at the moment, and then talk with each other. with your friends, with your family, with your children. You know, in everything that we do in our lives, it starts within the home. And if we're educated about something, if we're educated about what human rights mean and what women's rights, I mean, these are mothers. And you know, what is the precious mother, what it is to us in our culture, in our religion, in our communities. And imagine that was your mother. Imagine that was your sister.
To be honest,
imagine that was your niece.
To be honest with you,
we need to think about these things.
To be honest with you, yes, we talk about community cohesion, we talk about engagement, we talk about human rights, but more importantly, that lady, that sister, that mother, she is a human as well. This is the key thing that, you know, and anything that's done to her affects her for the rest of her life, and it's such a powerful any effect to that mother, that lady, that childbearing mother would surely knock her for the rest of her life.
No, but does it just knock her? It knocks us as people. It affects us. I mean, I'm sitting thousands of miles away, but just looking at the images of those women that were raped and afterwards, I mean, it could have been any one of us. It could have been any one of our daughters and our mothers. It affects us, and it doesn't affect us now. It affects us in the future. Who are we? What are we? What are our rights? What are our values in terms of international law, in terms of international countries? Kashmiris need to stand up and say, we need to be valued. We need to be heard. We are somebody. We are people who have been here centuries, and we belong to this world. We have to say that. We have to say that to ourselves first. That love yourself, value yourself. You've got history, you've got roots, you've got, faith, you've got elements of you. Whatever's happened to the mother that got raped in 1991, whatever happened, it's affecting us now. You can't get away with it. And it's going to affect generations, because your confidence goes, your worth as a person goes, your worth as a community goes, your worth as a country goes. It doesn't affect, and in our eyes, we shouldn't think it just affects her. It doesn't. It affects all of us, and we should be ashamed. We should be ashamed that we're not questioning the United Nations. We're not questioning the Indian Army. We're not questioning the British government on this. We have a right to speak, and I think this is where we, because we don't value ourselves, because we've been demonized maybe through history. We we don't think, we are great people. We've got great skills, intelligence, and how we suffer. They suffer and suffer, but they still continue their life. They say you can't suppress the spirit of people. So that those women that were raped, those mothers that were raped, those children and the boys tortured, you cannot forget that, and we should never forget it, and we should feel it, because it could happen to us any time. I mean, Ukraine is not far from us.
That's right, yeah.
You know what is happening? It's not far from us. All that can come here. All that can come to England. But this is what I say. For people in Pakistan and people in Azad Kashmir, you think that it doesn't affect you. It's going to affect us for generations. But until we give people a voice, because we're in the UK, we've got resources. We've got resources to things. We've got, the social media. We've got internet. We've got the newspapers. We've got elected MPs. We have the power, and the power of responsibility is in our hands.
Amin, thank you very much. Really appreciate you, ringing in this evening, and inshallah we will have you on again on a much lengthier conversation, and really appreciate your time, and speak to you soon. Liaqat Pavin said some really powerful words there. I'll ask you exactly the same question, is the fact that it comes to a point where this long-running dispute, 74-year history, you've described the massacre that happened in two towns in 31 years ago, and when I was reading up on it, even just reading the graphical information was shocking me and was sending shivers down my spine, and it really enriched with what's happening with Russia and Ukraine today. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I've got bombshells coming down on my roof and what have you. But this is what's happening in Ukraine today. People of Jammu and Kashmir have been experiencing it for 74 years, and yet the Western world, the European community have been blinkered with not taking any response. What can we do to bring this Kashmir issue to the forefront of action. We have told Amnesty International has been, human rights have been involved, United Nations have been on, but what can we do to escalate this issue, to bring it at the forefront?
Yeah, my message to the Kashmiri community is the charity begins from home. So we need to educate ourselves. We need to be proud to say that we are Kashmiri rather than dividing ourselves in different regions. Mirpuri, I'm Zafrabadi, I'm from this region, I'm from that region. We all are Kashmiri and we should be proud of it. And then secondly, we should educate our children, and then we should educate our nation. We have 1 million diaspora Kashmiri community. If Black Lives Matters all around the globe, why can't we make this happening in United Kingdom, that Kashmiri life matter? And that's going to happen only when we are united, we have one voice, and we are working together for the reunification and for the freedom and for against this oppression, united and in a one voice. And I can I have a strong belief that one day the Kashmiri nation will be freed, independent, and a prosperous nation on this globe. Thank you.
Shukriya. Really appreciate your time this evening. Viewers and listeners, thank you very much for listening to my program. Mohammed Amin, Sahid, thank you very much for listening. Hina, thank you very much for listening. Everybody who's listening today, as always, I've run out of time. And once again, until next week, look after yourselves, be careful, and be mindful when you're out and about with regards to wearing masks and what have you. COVID-19, it's still rife in the community, even though all the restrictions have been eased today. We still have to look after yourself, and inshallah, speak to you again next week. Take care. Khuda Hafiz.